This is an example lesson. We're speaking about the history of Britain going to Australia before it was known as Australia. The Indigenous people of Australia were dwelling there for beyond millennia, many years. Grammar, focus, the past perfect. We use the past perfect, had, and the past particle to describe an action that happened before another action in the past. Grammar is something we all can work on as we learn a different language. Even your own language, there are mistakes that you and I make occasionally. I hope that you're looking for someone who can encourage you on the journey. Much easier said than done. With a very slower pace, a very focused, intentional methodology, which is simply enjoying the process of learning a language. Here is the example. Repeat this, slow it down. By the time the first fleet arrived in 1788, the British government had decided that American colonies were no longer an option for prisoners. Interesting note, I do believe, I could be wrong, that quantity-wise, more convicts were sent to what we call is the USA. So that's an interesting point because often my dear American friends have joked about how many convicts are in Australia. In the late 18th century, British jails were overflowing. Industrialization had transformed the economy, but it had also pushed many people into poverty and crime. Question, is it a crime to steal bread to feed your family? Before the Revolutionary War, Britain had sent its convicts to North America, emphasizing my previous point there. Once the United States gained independence, good for you, that route was closed. The first fleet, 11 ships departed from Portsmouth before they reached Botany Bay, where, curious fact, is where I grew up. The sailors and prisoners had endured 8 months at sea. I've got my headphones on. I probably will listen to some songs that are about sailing while I'm reading this. The convicts, also known as the prisoners, and the sailor's perspective. The past perfect, the following examples use the past perfect, had, and the past participle to describe events that occurred during the 8-month voyage of the first fleet. This is an English lesson. I do want to pay my respects to the original people. I will also include the history of the Indigenous Australians who dwelt there, and it's actually a video I'd like to make later on, and I'd love to hear your commentary as well. By the 4th month, the sailors had repaired the mainsails 3 times due to heavy gales being heavy winds. The convicts had scrubbed the lower decks daily to stave off the stench of confinement. Stave, definition below. Before we reached the Cape of Good Hope, the cook had rationed the flour to prevent a total shortage. The guards had confiscated several makeshift tools that the prisoners had fashioned from scrap metal. You can see the rest of the notes. I won't be referring to them anymore for the challenging, different vocabulary that is used here. Many sailors had traded their tobacco for extra water before the heat of the tropics intensified. This is an English grammar practice. These might not be things that happen. Let's use our imagination. The captain had recorded every minor infraction in his logbook since the days we left Portsmouth. Before the storms hit, the lookout had spotted a pod of whales breaching near the hull. We had seen nothing but the horizon for 12 weeks before the African coastline appeared. This is colloquial conversation. Please imagine what the sailors would say, how they would communicate. So the timeline, point A and point B. Point A, the British lost the American colonies. Point B, the first fleet sailed to Australia. And here is the sentence. Because Britain had lost its American colonies, officials chose Australia as a new prison colony or destination to drop off the quote-unquote criminals. And of course, some definitely were genuine criminals. Life was incredibly difficult for the early arrivals. The convicts had expected fertile soil, but they found the ground around Sydney Cove difficult to farm. By the time the Second Fleet arrived in 1790, many of the original prisoners had died from starvation or disease.